What's up guys, Sean Nalawani, SeanNal.com, RealScienceAthletics.com, and today I want to address two potential drawbacks, two things to just be mindful of when it comes to utilizing a flexible dieting approach, also known as IIFYM, or if it fits your macros. And these points are especially important when you're in a cutting phase and you're eating in a calorie deficit. Now, as you guys already know, I generally am a big supporter of maintaining a flexible mindset towards nutrition. I think it's the best long-term approach for most people, with the basic idea just being that you don't necessarily have to eat clean 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in order to build muscle and lose fat effectively. And that as long as the majority of your diet is coming from nutrient-dense, minimally processed whole food sources, then it's okay to allot a certain percentage of your calories toward your favorite treat foods to make up the rest. And the usual breakdown you'll hear that I also think is a good basic approach is about 80 to 90% clean food, and then 10 to 20% of whatever you want, as long as it fits into your calories and your approximate macros for the day. And the obvious benefit there is that your diet is going to be more enjoyable. You'll feel less restricted, and that's going to help you increase your long-term adherence and help you maintain just a healthier relationship with your food. And it's just a more realistic and sustainable way to eat overall. Now, that said, there are certain instances, and again, this mostly applies to people who are following a cutting diet and who are aiming to lose fat, where at least during certain periods, being too flexible can actually work against you. And the potential issue that some people can run into is where they're just too focused on the idea that losing fat is all about maintaining a calorie deficit, and then as long as they're burning more calories than they consume, that they're gonna lose fat, and so that's really all it comes down to. And it is true that if you're in a calorie deficit, you will lose fat, and that you aren't gonna lose fat without one. But in addition to that, you also have to consider the very important factor of hunger management. In other words, not only do you need to eat in a calorie deficit, but you also need to set your diet up in a way to where you feel as full and satisfied throughout the day as possible, because the more you're able to keep your appetite under control, the more likely it'll be that you'll stick to your diet long term, and the better you're gonna feel throughout the entire process. So even though treat foods like ice cream or pizza or cookies do give you a certain level of psychological satisfaction, the downside is that they're extremely energy dense, meaning they pack a lot of calories into only a very small volume of actual food. Now, if you're bulking and you're having trouble hitting your overall calorie needs for muscle growth, then that can actually be a helpful thing. But if you're cutting, it can have the opposite effect. So just to give you one quick example, a chocolate chip muffin from Starbucks weighs 115 grams and contains 440 calories. Now, technically speaking, if you were able to fit that muffin into your calories for the day and it kept you in a net deficit overall, then yes, you'd still end up losing body fat. But rather than just eating one small muffin, you could instead eat 125 grams of chicken breast, 200 grams of sweet potato, and 300 grams of mixed vegetables, which equals out to the same calorie total, meaning you're getting more than 5 times the food volume for the same number of calories if you were to go with the cleaner meal of protein, carbs, and veggies rather than the muffin. Not to mention that it's also going to be a lot more nutrient dense as well. So if hunger is a big issue for you, if it's making it hard for you to stick to your cutting plan, and this is especially going to apply the leaner you get and the lower you're trying to drop your body fat percentage, then you're likely going to be better off to utilize a less flexible approach, at least for the time being, and just focus mainly on maximizing your food volume relative to your calorie volume. So that might mean having a smaller percentage of your food allotted to these treat items, or only incorporating treat foods maybe every 2 or 3 days rather than every day, or just eating mostly clean throughout the week, and then having one larger refeed day where you eat at maintenance and you treat yourself a bit more. There's no single approach here because everyone is different, but the bottom line is that you need to find the proper balance for yourself between maintaining a deficit while also managing your hunger. And if treat foods are taking up too many calories and aren't leaving you physically satisfied, then having a higher percentage of your diet come from minimally processed, lower calorie whole foods is probably going to work better for you. So that's the first issue. And then the second issue is the concept of trigger foods, meaning certain foods that cause you to compulsively overeat once you've had just a small taste of them. So some people might be totally fine eating 2 cookies as part of their overall calories and macros for the day and then just moving on without issue. But for other people, eating certain high sugar, high fat foods in moderation can be really difficult to do, especially while they're in a calorie deficit and their cravings are a lot higher. And so instead, 2 cookies ends up as 4 and then 6, and then they feel disappointed for having gone off track. So they just figure what the hell, and they let things spiral even further. So if you're someone who does have issues controlling themselves once they get a taste of, say, a slice of pizza or a brownie or something, and then that's all you can think about, again, you'll probably be best off to eat these foods less often, or even just abstain from them altogether, at least for a temporary period while you're dieting, because when you're in a deficit, the taste of everything basically just gets enhanced, and certain high fat, high sugar foods basically feels like you're on drugs, and it can be really hard to stop once you get started. I mean, if someone had a drinking problem and was addicted to alcohol, you wouldn't tell them to just go ahead and have only 1 drink per day or 2 drinks per day, because there's pretty much a guarantee that they wouldn't stop there. So when it comes to being really hooked on certain foods, it may not be as strong as someone who's addicted to alcohol or drugs, but it is a similar concept. So if you're in a deficit and you know that you're gonna have a really hard time controlling yourself, again, you might be best off to just cut out certain foods altogether, at least temporarily, until you're eventually back at maintenance and your hunger levels aren't as high. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this advice was helpful. If you have been struggling to lose fat or gain muscle and you need some help getting onto the proper path, you can check out my complete body transformation blueprint program by clicking at the top of the screen or visiting btblueprint.com. That program ties together everything you need to know in terms of training, nutrition, and supplementation in an easy to follow step-by-step format. For those who are new to the channel, my brand new science-based pre-workout fish oil and multivitamin are also now available over at REALSCIENCEathletics.com. The link for that is in the description. And make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe below if you haven't already in order to stay up to date on future videos. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.